Yo, what's good, my great sages? It's your host, Sage D Samurai here, now here today to bring you another What If. This being the What If movie, to What If Subaru was Yuta's reincarnation. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this What If. I really hope y'all do enjoy. As now, with that being said, let's get started. So to begin the what if, we'll now start off by taking a look at Subaru's origins. Turning to his childhood, we will see Subaru growing up throughout the years as he would have a relatively normal upbringing. However, soon all this will then change during his 10-year-old birthday, as we will see something within him change, as instead of being the loud and obnoxious kid, Subaru would then turn into someone who was much more calm and mature, as this would be the time that his memories of being Yuta Kotsu would then awaken, with the sudden surge of memories causing him to also unlock his cursed energy at the same time. As now flashing forward to when Subaru is at the age of 18, we will see him again, as by this point, instead of being a shut-in like he was in the main timeline, he would be a hard-working young adult, with him having a part-time job while also studying to become a psychologist, as this would be Subaru's life, but only during the day, as at night, that's where Subaru would then do his other job, this being a jujutsu sorcerer. You see, due to his awakening of his memories and his cursed energy, Subaru had unintentionally caused a shift throughout his entire world, with powerful cursed spirits then beginning to appear all around him, and him having no choice but to exercise them, as this would be considered as training by Subaru. As thanks to these cursed spirits, Subaru was able to train up his body, increase his cursed energy, and get back control that he had in his old life, with these events building up to how Subaru is now. As now turning to the present, we will see Subaru as he will be finishing up the latest cursed spirit in the area, with him finishing it off by using a katana that he disguised as a kendo stick. And after seeing that he eliminated all the threats in the area, this is where Subaru would then decide to head home, with him making a quick stop at the nearest gas station in order to get just a couple of things. While there, we will see Subaru as he would get a call from his parents, as this would be them just simply checking on him to see where he was at, while also asking when he was going to come home, with Subaru answering all their questions while also having some light banter with them. As after making his purchase, this is where Subaru would then try to head home, only to then stop as he feels a surge of cursed energy, the highest that he's ever felt before, with these high levels of cursed energy all of a sudden then rushing at him before completely engulfing him, as the last thing he would see before getting engulfed is two familiar ginormous arms rushing to protect him while screaming his old name, Yuta, as this will be the moment that 18-year-old Natsuki Subaru would then go missing, as this is where I'm now gonna do a change of scenes. Turning to a location that was unknown to us, we will now see Subaru once again, with the very first thing that he would take notice of in this unknown setting is the medievalness, as it really seems outdated, and he would also end up realizing that there was a bunch of animal-like people walking around him, with this coming to be a great shock. Fortunately though, after his shock would settle down, this is where Subaru would then begin navigating throughout this strange world that he was transported to, with him gaining as much information as possible and only stopping in a nearby alleyway to have a short break. However, while there, this is where he would then be approached by a trio of thugs, similar to how it was in the main timeline, with Subaru trying to resolve any problem that they may have with him peacefully. But unfortunately, these guys were too stubborn and too desperate, as they would try to beat him up and take all his stuff from him. But before they get the chance, a sinister burst of energy would then be released from Subaru, with the sheer amount of it causing a pressure to engulf the alleyway, as Subaru, while still remaining calm, would then once again give them a chance to back down. But you could hear the underlying intentions, and feeling the evilness that seemed to be involved with this energy, while also realizing that Subaru wasn't some normal guy, the trio of thugs would then decide to run for their lives, as after seeing that they were gone, the energy that Subaru was releasing would vanish, with him going back to sit down and eating a bag of chips that he bought before coming to this world. However, while he was eating, this is when he would then stop, as he calls out someone that was hiding nearby. As this is where we would then get introduced to Felt, as she had entered the alleyway to get away from someone, similar to how she does in the main timeline, only to then hide in fear after feeling the energy that Subaru was releasing. As now realizing that she was caught, this is where she will step out terrified, as she drops the item that she stole, telling Subaru that she wasn't a threat and was just trying to pass. Now, Subaru, after hearing this, would allow her to go, but before she could leave, he would ask her some questions, mostly about where he was at, the day, and if there was any place he can go to gain some assistance, without being too terrified to leave without answering them, as she would spend so much time answering his questions that by the end of it, Emilia would arrive to see her, demanding her to return the insignia, with Fel, after hearing this, immediately picking up the item and running off, leaving Subaru and Emilia by themselves. Now things would play out similar to the main timeline from this point, with Subaru and Emilia getting introduced to each other, with Emilia not trusting Subaru at first and giving him a fake name, and Subaru wanting to help Emilia because he felt bad for not stopping the thief, as eventually the two of them would begin looking for Felt. As during this time, while the two of them were looking around, Subaru would learn a couple more things, such as the spirit arts and how spirits are in this world, with Puck being used as an example. As an interesting to note is that when Puck went to check Subaru to see what were his intentions, he also felt a foreign yet almost sinister energy from him, causing him to be much more serious and wary around Subaru, not sure if he was a threat or not, but willing to allow him to stay since he was sure that he was stronger than him. As other than that, the search for Felt would continue to play out, with the only difference being that they would find the loot house much sooner, as when they're there, while Emilia and Felt were arguing about the insignia, Subaru would be there, beginning to feel someone approaching, as the first thing he would take notice of is their cursed energy flaring up with malicious intent, as when this person was close enough, this is where Subaru would then use the supposed kendo stick he had on him to block a dagger that was aimed at Emilia's head, as Elsa the Bow Hunter would enter the scene, as after seeing how Subaru blocked her dagger so easily, this is where she begins asking if he was a knight, and telling him she was excited to see how strong he really was. Meanwhile, Emilia and everyone else would finally realize what was going on, as Emilia would try to help Subaru, only for him to decline and tell her to stay back, making a comment saying that no one in this room, besides Puck and him, stands a chance against Elsa, with Puck appearing and vouching for this, reminding Emilia about his time limit, and also commenting that Subaru isn't as normal as he may seem. As after those words were said, this is where Subaru and Elsa would then pull out their respective weapons before suddenly exchanging blows. As thanks to his training and cursed energy, Subaru would be able to fight on equal level with Elsa, with both of them moving at speeds that no one in the room besides Puck could keep up with. As eventually, after this goes on for a while, Subaru would find an opening and slash Elsa across her chest, sending her flying into the wall, with everyone watching thinking that the fight was over. However, this is when she would then once again rush at Subaru, ignoring the injuries that were sustained, as she teaches everyone the rules of a bow hunter, and how they won't stop fighting until their bodies were completely destroyed, causing Subaru to immediately get an idea. As after quickly barraging her with multiple slashes and forcing her into the wall, this is where Subaru would thank her for the information as he tells everyone else to leave, since he was about to end the fight. With everyone doing so, although reluctantly, as once they were gone and after stopping Elsa's final attempt at assassination towards Emilia, this is where Subaru would then gain familiar markings on both the sides of his mouth, with Elsa rushing at him one more time, wondering what they are, only for Subaru to say one word: explode. With the very next thing we will see is the entire loot house exploding, with everyone outside wondering what happened, as Emilia would be scared thinking that something happened to Subaru, only for him to casually walk out like nothing happened. As while everyone begins questioning him about the incident, this is when Reinhardt would then appear, causing things to go similar to the main timeline from here on out, with Emilia getting her insignia back and Felt being taken by Reinhardt. Fortunately, Old Man Ram in this timeline goes with them, while Subaru goes with Emilia. As now with these events taken care of, this is where we can now do a time skip. So now flashing forward to the next following day, after the events that transpire, we will see Subaru once again, as by this point, similar to the main timeline, he would be awake in Emilia's guest room, with him being confused at first until he remembers the events that happened yesterday. As right after shaking off his surprise, Subaru would then begin trying to navigate throughout Emilia's home, with him opening a certain door during this time that he believes will lead to the main room, only for it to then be a library, as this is where Subaru would then meet Beatrice. Now the interaction between these two would play out differently compared to the main timeline, with Subaru throughout the entire conversation being respectful and Beatrice also not being too rude as well, as everything would play out smoothly until Beatrice would then try taking some mana from Subaru, as when she does this, a burst of cursed energy would then be released from him, with Beatrice being unsettled as she would feel an evil presence staring her down. As right when it was about to attack, Subaru would calm it down by saying the name Rika. As after saying the name, the burst of cursed energy would settle down, with Beatrice asking what exactly was that, with Subaru calmly telling her that it was someone important to him. As due to being unsettled and uncomfortable around Subaru at the moment, Beatrice would then ask him to leave, with Subaru doing so no questions asked, as he already understood exactly why she told him. Plus, he also needed some time to think since he had begun to notice something that he hadn't before. As flashing forward to later on, we would see Subaru in his room doing some meditation. But while he was doing this, suddenly the door to his room would open as Emilia along with the two maids, Rem and Ram, would enter. As from this point, things would play out similar to the main timeline, with Subaru being invited by Emilia for a tour of the mansion while they wait for breakfast to be ready. As during their time exploring the mansion, Emilia would ask Subaru how he was able to defeat Elsa, with Subaru explaining vaguely that similar to her, he has his own tricks to deal with problems. As this answer only made Emilia more curious, but she decided to let it go for now. As changing the subject, she would then ask Subaru where did he learn to fight with a sword and if he was training to become a knight, with Subaru answering these questions while also asking some of his own, with the next following moments being the two of them just simply talking to each other and learning more about the other, with this continuing until it was time for breakfast. As now flashing forward to the moment they would arrive at the dining hall, we will see things continue to play out similar to the main timeline, with Subaru being introduced to Roswell and him being explained about the importance of the insignia and Emilia being a candidate for the Kingdom of Lagunica. As after processing all the information, Subaru would then be asked what he would like as a reward for saving Emilia, with Subaru asking to stay at the mansion until he's able to figure out what to do next, since he really had nowhere else to go and he didn't even know where to start. As Roswell would agree to this, as for the next following days that would pass, we will see Subaru staying at the mansion, keeping up with his training, learning as much information he possibly could, while also getting to build connections with everyone in the mansion. However, while doing all this, Subaru was also able to take notice of certain things, such as the abnormally high levels of cursed energy in the world, the lack of cursed spirits, and also a shift in his very own cursed energy. As ever since his arrival, Subaru has realized that the rules of this world were completely different from his own. And now after staying at the mansion for a couple of days, those rules seem to have affected him some type of way, as he realized that there was a change in his cursed energy, and he was unsure if it was good or bad. As now turning to the present moment, we will see Subaru currently out with Rem doing groceries, as he would want to help out any way he can while he was staying at the mansion, similar to the main timeline. However, while doing this, as Rem would be gathering the final items for their grocery list, Subaru would be with the rest of the village kids, doing magic tricks to entertain them, but when he was doing this, a certain girl with a dog would then approach Subaru, offering him to pet the puppy, which on the outside seemed innocent. But due to being able to see cursed energy, Subaru can tell the true intentions behind her offer, as he can see the pure hatred and malicious intent the girl had towards him. And along with that, Subaru was also able to see the huge amount of cursed energy this dog seemed to have, with it being able to rival that of a grade 1 cursed spirit or maybe even a special grade. As now understanding that something was wrong, Subaru would then cautiously pet the dog while asking the girl questions about it, with her answering all these questions with lies that Subaru was able to take notice of thanks to being able to see her cursed energy. As after petting the dog and stopping it from biting him, Subaru would then be taken back by Rem to the mansion. As throughout their journey back, Subaru was already making plans to return back to the village, with him believing that something was up. As flashing forward to later on in the night, while everyone would be at the mansion, we would then see Subaru try to head out to the village to check on the people. But unfortunately for him, his path would then be blocked by none other than Rem, as she would be there with her weapon drawn and having a cold look on her face, with Subaru after seeing this being unsurprised as he already knew something like this was coming. As similar to the main timeline, Rem would suspect Subaru of being with the witch cult, with her anger and hatred towards him growing by the day, and Subaru would be able to notice all of it, due to him seeing her cursed energy react violently towards him. As well, yes, Subaru hasn't died yet in this timeline, due to his vague background, his calm and detached mannerisms, and him using cursed energy, which Rem doesn't see but feels the evilness behind it. This would be enough to cause Rem to be suspicious. And now seeing that he was sneaking away to the village for unknown reasons, it was enough for Rem to see him as a threat that needs to be eliminated. As after a stare down, Rem would then order Subaru to tell her everything about the witch cult, while also saying that if he does, he will gain a much quicker death. With Subaru sighing after hearing this, as while in normal circumstances he would try to talk it out, unfortunately due to sensing the instability of Rem's emotions, and due to realizing that he was running out of time thanks to the sudden increase of negative energy at the village, Subaru would have no choice but to knock out Rem, as he would tell Rem that he didn't have time for this and that he would have to apologize to her after she wakes up. With Rem growing angry after hearing this remark, as she would then attack Subaru with her Morning Star. But right as the spike ball was about to impale Subaru, to Rem's surprise, Subaru would be able to cut it in half with his katana, destroying her weapon with relative ease, and causing her to grow even angrier. With her anger triggering her horn to then try to awaken, but unfortunately that transformation wouldn't happen, as when she's transforming, Subaru would then have the Inomaki seals appear on both sides of his mouth, as he would then tell Rem to sleep, causing her to then grow drowsy before collapsing down to the ground, completely knocked out and fully asleep. Now funnily enough, she wasn't the only one, as turning his attention to a nearby tree, Subaru would then see Rem as well, also knocked out, as she had been there watching the altercation and was planning on attacking Subaru if he were to harm Rem, as Subaru would shake his head at the whole ordeal before then rushing towards the village at inhuman speeds. As now flashing forward to when he arrives, we would then see Subaru be swarmed by villagers, with all of them telling him about the situation about the children going missing. And while they were doing that, Subaru would also be able to take notice of the intense levels of cursed energy coming from the forest, realizing that something must have holding it back until now, since he would usually be able to feel something like this nearby, and that someone may have tampered with it. But he decided to put that in the back of his mind for now, as instead he will calm down the villagers and promise to get their kids back. As after they settled down, Subaru would then journey into the forest with full intentions of keeping his promise. As now turning to inside the forest, we would then see the start of these events play out similar to the main timeline, with Subaru soon encountering the missing children, with him realizing that they were affected by something, as he could see high levels of cursed energy coming from a small bite mark on their hands, while also being able to hear their faint breath as it would slowly grow even more shallow, which would cause Subaru to grow angry. As using reverse curse energy, Subaru would be able to slow down whatever was affecting the children, but it wouldn't be able to stop it completely, causing Subaru to begin running out of options until he realizes that the curse energy that was emitting from the bite seemed to still be connected to the dog, potentially meaning to Subaru that if he were to slay the dog, then whatever technique was affecting these kids would be able to put to an end. As now with a new plan in mind, Subaru, after returning the kids to the village, would then try to locate the dog, but with this not taking too long, as he would eventually stumble upon it, along with the little girl, as she was trying to pretend to be helpless, but Subaru knew better, calling her out and making her have no choice but to reveal who she truly was, with her being revealed to be an assassin named Emilia, who was trying to get revenge on Subaru for what he did to Elsa, while also being under orders from her boss to attack the village, with this causing Subaru to have multiple questions, but he decides to put it in the back of his head for now, as he realized that there was much more important things to focus on, this being to destroy the cursed dog in front of him. But before he has a chance, more of these dogs would then appear, with Emilia telling Subaru that he stood no chance against this many mob beasts, with Subaru being stared down by all of them, but not showing any signs of concern. Rather instead, this is when he would then put on a ring that was on his necklace, as unfortunately for Emilia, Subaru was in a hurry, and although he decided not to use cursed speech in fear that he may harm her, that didn't mean that he wasn't about to absolutely slaughter every mob beast in the area, just as quickly. As suddenly bursting with cursed energy, this is where Subaru would then utter the word, Rika. As in the next moment, before Melly had time to register, the mob base that was next to her and a couple of others that were near Subaru would then be destroyed. As all of a sudden, a creature she had never seen before would then appear from a pocket space, with it standing protectively near Subaru while also calling him Yuta affectionately, and Subaru calmly patting it on its head with a small smile on his face, acting as if it didn't already take care of a couple of mob beasts like it was nothing. As Subaru would be there complimenting Rika before asking her if she could help him take care of all these enemies, with Melly soon being extremely terrified, as Rika would then set her gaze onto her, with a menacing smile on her face, asking Subaru if she should also attack the girl, with Subaru saying no and telling her only the mob beast. As after hearing this is where we would then see both Rika and Subaru go to work, with the two slaughtering the hordes of mob beasts that were around them in record time, as Melly could do nothing more but watch in horror until eventually she and the original were last. As now seeing the situation that she was in, she would then try to run away but fail, as the final mob beast would then be taken care of by Rika, and Subaru would be able to catch up to her and put her to sleep using his cursed speech, putting an end to these events as we now do a time skip. As now flashing forward to when Subaru returns, we will see all the village kids be healed up, thanks to him using reverse curse energy, with them and all the villagers immediately thanking Subaru for what he's done, to which he says was no problem. As after seeing that everything was finally settled down, this is when he would then return to the mansion with Melly. As after a bit of explaining and arguing with everyone at the mansion, with Rem and Ram almost willing to try and fight him again, but fortunately due to Emilia and Beatrice being present and due to Melly having no choice but to explain what she was going to do to the village, any suspicions about Subaru was cleared up. And also, he was later given a sincere apology from Rem, as she felt terrible that she nearly ended an innocent man's life due to her trauma. Fortunately though, Subaru was able to forgive her, with the two having a similar moment to the main timeline, as Subaru would be able to help Rem with her inferiority complex after she opens up, and by the end of these events, Rem would still develop a crush on Subaru. Also, if you're wondering about what happened to Melly, unfortunately due to committing those crimes and due to nearly ending the kids' lives, she would have to be temporarily thrown into prison at Emilia's camp. Although luckily for her, it was temporarily, which means she would eventually be able to be let free, but until then she will be giving counseling during that time, as Emilia and Subaru still wanted to help her since she was still young and they believed that she could change. As now with these events taken care of, this is where we now do a time skip. So now flashing forward to the next following days after the events that happened, we will see things remain relatively peaceful at the mansion with Subaru and the rest of the Emilia camp. However, all that would then change as Emilia would then soon be called to the capital, with Subaru accompanying her due to Emilia's request, since she wants to make sure that he was okay after the events in the forest, even though Subaru has let her know that he was a-okay, but she still wanted to, make sure he gets checked at least. And at this point, we will see things remain similar to the main timeline, with the difference being that since Subaru isn't in love with Emilia here, he will be more composed and understanding while in the capital, especially after Emilia explains to him about the role selection. And for the events that happened during the role selection, things will play out smoothly, with Subaru fully trusting Emilia to be able to handle the situation, although he was angry about what the nobles had to say. But at the end of the day, he didn't really engage them, and due to that, he didn't embarrass himself and didn't end up fighting Julius. So that meant that Subaru was able to, walk away from this with his pride still intact and, him still being in Emilia's good grace. But a couple of things do end up remaining similar to the main timeline though. This being Subaru staying at the capital while Emilia heads off to the mansion. And the main reason behind this is because of the fact that Emilia wants to make sure that Subaru's health was okay, so she tells him to stay there for a little bit more so that way he can be fully checked up on. Now, though Subaru would try to argue against this, unfortunately he would have to let it go since Emilia was being incredibly stubborn and he did not have the energy to deal with that. So with that, we will then see Emilia head off to the mansion with Roswell, all while Subaru and Rem would stay there at the capital. Now for the next couple of days, we will see things continuously remain similar to the main timeline here, with Subaru getting checked up on by Felix and overall just enjoying his stay at the capital. However, this is where things then begin to, diverge, as during the time that Subaru was there, since he wasn't really doing much and just, chilling with Rem, this is when he would then see Rem suddenly get a very, worried look on her face, as he would ask her what was up, as this is when Rem would then reveal that something was going on back at the mansion, and that they must hurry. Now Subaru, after hearing this, would immediately grow serious, as this is when both him and Rem would then immediately rush to the mansion, as they would be able to get there much quicker than they did in the main timeline, and they did not have the encounter with the white whale. But yet, even with that, it still wasn't enough to stop the horrible events that were about to transpire. As you see, the moment that Rem as well as Subaru would arrive, they wouldn't see it, as they would see multiple different people just attacking the village, and many of them heading to the mansion. As this is when Rem would then immediately scream out witch cultists, as this would cause Subaru to realize who they were. As with no hesitation, this is where Rem and Subaru would then face off against the witch cultists, with them defeating their respective opponents relatively easily, until the entire village was cleared up of them. But right after taking care of them though, this is when they would then rush to the mansion, as when they ended up arriving there, they would then locate Rem as well as Emilia, to which they were able to find them relatively easily. As once the group was reunited, this is where they began questioning each other about what's going on, as this is when the others would then reveal that they have no idea, as the witch cults just seemed to appear out of nowhere and were staging an attack. Now Subaru will be trying to find out exactly why, as he then remembers what Millie had said, wondering if she was possibly behind it, but he decided to save it in the back of his head for now, since more witch cultists were approaching and they still needed to fight. As fortunately though, thanks to Subaru being way stronger than he was in the main timeline, they would have a much easier time dealing with the witch cultists until Subaru would then finally be able to find out who was the main source behind this attack, this being the Archbishop of Sloth, this being Petelgeuse. As Subaru would be able to sense him, and also he'll be able to feel the ginormous amount of cursed energy that he seems to have on him, as legit it was outrageously large that caused Subaru to wonder if this is the equivalent of a special grade in this world, if not maybe even stronger than that. As Subaru begins to sweat, this is when he then tells everyone that they need to evacuate here, as this is when he then says that he's going to take care of the person behind this, with Ram, as well as Emilia trying to assist him with that, but he would immediately shut them down, as he feels much more confident with dealing with this guy by himself, since if he's with others, then that means he has to kind of, limit himself, since he couldn't even use cursed speech with them around. So this is when he then tells them to go on ahead and instructs, Ram to protect Emilia and Emilia to protect Ram, basically for all of them to look out for each other. As right after they would then head off, this is where Subaru would then immediately rush to the location of Petelgeuse, as he would find him in record time, as he would just be there wandering alone in the forest like a weirdo, to which he was. As immediately after seeing Subaru, Petelgeuse would then begin trembling, as he then looks at Subaru for a moment, wondering why exactly he was so loved, as he would ask Subaru if he was Pride, with Subaru not knowing who exactly that was. As Petelgeuse, seeing Subaru's silence, would take it as Subaru saying yes to being Pride, as this is when he then begins to shake in excitement, as this is when he begins talking about, her love and a bunch of other weird stuff that Subaru just didn't understand. But he did understand one thing: this guy was causing problems, and unfortunately he needed to take him down. So with no other choice, this is when Subaru would then pull out his katana, as enhancing himself with cursed energy, he would then disappear before appearing behind Petelgeuse. As in the very next second, this is where Petelgeuse's head would then fall off its shoulders, meaning that he had been successfully taken down by Subaru with low difficulty. Or at least that's what Subaru had thought, and he was honestly confused by it. With the amount of cursed energy this guy seemed to hold, Subaru thought that this guy was going to be like, the most powerful opponent he has faced yet, but yet he seems to prove otherwise. As Subaru would just be there looking at the body for a second, this is when he would then try to leave, only for him to then see it, as he would see a huge hand then rushing towards him, trying to flatten him, as he would dodge out of the way just in the nick of time. As this is when another Petelgeuse would then arrive, as Subaru would be confused, as he would then look down at the first one, then looking at the second, as he wonders what exactly was going on, as this is when Petelgeuse then begins to realize that Subaru wasn't Pride. But why exactly was he so loved? As literally feeling jealousy and being upset about the fact that Subaru wasn't Pride, this is when Petelgeuse would then truly try to fight him and try to kill him this time around. As Subaru versus Petelgeuse would then truly begin during this instance, with Subaru dodging out of the way of multiple hands that were approaching him, as he wondered exactly what is this power, as he has never seen anything like it. But fortunately enough, that didn't mean that, he was getting taken down or that he was having trouble with him, as Subaru was still able to see the hands and was able to dodge them. As he would cut Petelgeuse multiple times, able to finish him off once again, only for another to appear, and then another one, and then another one. As Subaru was now extremely confused, what exactly was up with this guy? But before he really gets a chance to really think about it though, as Subaru and Petelgeuse would then fight again, this is when he would then stop, as Subaru would then begin to feel an intense cold then fill in the area, as he begins to look up into the sky to realize that it was snowing. But that didn't make sense. How? As Subaru begins to look around and Petelgeuse would then do the same thing, this is when suddenly a huge blizzard then begins to strike the area that they were in, as Subaru will feel his body begin to freeze up from it as he tries to resist it using his curse energy, and even tries using his reverse curse technique to fix it. All the while Petelgeuse would just be there, once again mumbling a bunch of nonsense that Subaru didn't care for, as this is when they would then hear heavy footsteps approaching. As then eventually this is when Subaru would then encounter the Great Spirit, this being Puck, as he was in his true monstrous form, as this is when he would then stare down at Subaru before letting him know that he failed. Now Subaru seeing this would be absolutely shocked, as he would be so shocked enough to the point that he doesn't even realize that Petelgeuse was completely frozen. And even more so, he wouldn't even realize that now his body was reaching critical temperatures, and that he wouldn't last too long. As right after noticing this is when Subaru would then immediately put on the ring from his necklace, as when he does, he gathers a large amount of cursed energy and brings out Rika. As upon Rika's appearance, this will cause Puck to be surprised, since he had never seen anything like her before, and he would be even more surprised when he finds out exactly what she was. As while Subaru was trying his best to heal up his body, Rika would grow extremely angry as she would immediately rush at Puck, trying to hit him. But unfortunately for her, thanks to Puck being, extremely powerful, he would be easily able to avoid her attack and would be able to freeze her up entirely. But Subaru knew that wouldn't really work, as Rika would be able to burst out of it. Now this will surprise Puck as the two spirits would then face off against each other, with Subaru trying his best to, remain calm and trying to heal up his body from the cold. But unfortunately for him, as he would try this more and more, and as Rika continues fighting against Puck, this is when the cold begins to grow to unbearable. Even with reverse curse energy, Subaru was growing tired, and even though Rika was most definitely, attacking Puck and doing everything she could, she still wouldn't be able to defeat Puck fast enough. Which means, unfortunately for Subaru, at this moment, this was where he would then pass away for the very first time, as the cold would be too unbearable that his body would then officially give up on him, with Subaru doing nothing more but cursing about this, but he ended up accepting his fate, since it wasn't as if he thought he was going to live forever, but he most definitely thought he was going to live longer than this. As with that, we will then see Subaru pass away for the first time, as this is when he would then loop. As suddenly waking up, this is where Subaru would then find himself right back at the capital, and right back to before he left to the mansion with Rem. In fact, it was a couple of days before they even left in the first place. As Subaru being here would be confused as he tries to understand what exactly was going on, as this is where we will now do a miniature time skip. So now flashing forward to later on, after Subaru would settle down, this is where we will then see him come to terms with the fact of this new ability that he had awakened, this being Return by Death. Now Subaru would be initially confused about the fact of how he gained this ability in the first place, as he tried to connect it to something, but no matter what he tried to do, it just didn't add up. But instead of dwelling on it for too long, this is where Subaru would then collect himself once again and shove it in the back of his head, as instead he decided to focus on a much more pressing matter, this being the witch cultist attack. Now Subaru had to admit, this was actually very surprising to him, since he didn't expect Puck to freak out like that, and he also did not expect Emilia to fall, especially when she had Rem and Ram with her, plus Puck. But once again, this made things even more confusing to him, as Subaru would try to think of ways to save Emilia. As from this point on, this is where I'm going to now do a skim forward, as for the next following moments, we will see Subaru try various ways to save Emilia, whether it be going to the mansion much sooner to save her, but unfortunately, the ending result will still play out the same, with Subaru unfortunately failing to save Emilia, and Puck then turning into the beast of the end to destroy the entire world, with Subaru falling to him. Subaru will try a variety of ways, whether it be trying to confront the witch cultist by himself, or whether trying to be there to protect Emilia, but no matter what way he tried, it always seemed to end in failure, which was honestly very surprising to him considering the fact that with all his strength, he thought for sure that he'd be able to deal with them. But the main problem wasn't Subaru's strength, it was more about the fact that the witch cultists had just too many numbers, and also the fact that Emilia seems to be extremely vulnerable if you leave her alone for long enough. So this would cause Subaru to die a pretty handful amount of times, and also in one of those loops, he'd even die before he even reached the mansion. As during the time that him as well as Rem would then try to go to the mansion, they would encounter the white whale just like they do in the main timeline. with Subaru unfortunately passing away due to not understanding the White Whale's ability and getting taken down by its mist, as he will be fully erased. So needless to say, after dying this many times, Subaru will be quite exhausted, both physically and mentally. But fortunately though, this wouldn't last too long, as Subaru would then finally get his act together. As by this point now, after dying already this many times, Subaru would acknowledge that he still isn't strong enough to deal with the situation. Or more precisely, he wasn't strong enough to take care of the witch cultists and protect Emilia. So with that, similar to the main timeline, this is where he would then decide to ask for assistance, from Krush as well as Anastasia, as he would ask the two for assistance in exchange for some important information. As for Anastasia, he would give her access to the merchant area, to where like all the different merchants were, to support her even further, and for Krush, he would give her the directions for the White Whale. Now after hearing this, the two would think about it for a while before they would eventually agree with Subaru, just like they do in the main timeline. As in, for the next couple of days, in preparation for the battle, we will see Subaru, as during this time he will be getting trained with William as well as Julius, as the two of them, after realizing that Subaru was actually a competent fighter, and due to the fact that they're preparing for the battle against the White Whale, they decide to actually, help out everyone that is considered an ally, and since Subaru is considered an ally, he was getting trained. As while he was getting trained by William and Julius, this is when Julius would actually point out something to Subaru. As during their time of preparations, Julius would then ask Subaru if he wants to train in the spiritual arts, considering the fact that Subaru seems to have a spirit that's latched onto him. As he would ask Subaru if that was a contracted spirit, or if that was just a spirit that was looking to do a contract with him. Now Subaru will be confused considering the fact that he couldn't sense any spirit that was nearby, as the closest thing that you could assume was a spirit was Rika, but the thing was, Rika was just his curse technique, it was nothing more. After all, since the original passed away, right? Or at least that's what Subaru had thought. Because you see, when Julius ends up confirming to Subaru once again that he actually had a full-on spirit latched onto him, this will cause Subaru to then realize that somehow, someway, Rika, the one that he had been fighting with at the forest and everything, and the one that he has been with throughout the entirety of his journey, had somehow, someway transformed into a great spirit, similar to Puck. But this made no sense to Subaru, considering the fact that at any instance, he doesn't remember Rika going through a transformation or anything like that, and to him, everything has felt familiar to him. Basically, he felt as if nothing had changed. But then again, there was those weird moments where Rika would then have like automatic outbursts without Subaru having the ring on hand. As he remembered that one instance when Beatrice tried to, absorb some mana, and Rika had reacted violently. As he thought that maybe that was just his subconsciousness, or maybe that was just, like his curse technique acting up. But if what Julius says is true, then does that mean that Rika had came back? The same one that he thought he had left a long time ago, back in his old life? And I mean before he was even Subaru? As this would cause Subaru himself to really be extremely confused by this, but he decided to once again save in the back of his mind for now, considering the fact that the day for the battle was approaching fast and he didn't have time to really think about it. As turning to the very day of the battle, we will then see Subaru and his comrades as they would then face off against the White Whale. Now I'm not really going to describe much about this battle, considering the fact that there isn't really much to describe, as all you need to know is that Subaru and his comrades would be able to defeat the White Whale with low difficulty. As although yes, they did have a few casualties of course, that didn't mean that they didn't defeat the White Whale, just like they do in the main timeline here. As the only real difference here would be the fact that Subaru throughout the battle would be much more competent, and he would actually be there along with the rest of the soldiers doing damage to the White Whale, and wouldn't just rely completely on the ground dragon and also Rem. As thanks to Subaru's curse energy and thanks to him actually knowing how to fight, this will cause him to actually contribute a lot more too, allowing for the White Whale to be defeated and also the others that would come along with it. As this would end up resulting in the White Whale being defeated, and his corpse finally being taken away back to the capital to be shown as basically a trophy for Crush and the rest of her campus. But you see, while Crush and half her soldiers would then head off to the capital, the rest of the remaining forces would actually accompany Subaru to Roswell's manor. As during that time, this is when they would then encounter the witch cultists, to which, similar to the main timeline, they would be able to defeat them. As the remaining forces were easily able to defeat the witch cultists, and Subaru along with Rem were actually able to come up with a new plan along the way, as they were able to diverge Emilia's path, making it to where Emilia would be far away from the danger, all the while Subaru and the rest of the forces would be able to take care of the witch cult. As eventually all the witch cultists would then be slaughtered until Betelgeuse would then be left, as he would just be there trembling, muttering that this was not at all part of her plan, and saying something about her love and how this was just completely unfair, and how basically Subaru and the rest of his squad was ruining all his plans. But unfortunately for him, Subaru was already too tired, as after defeating Petelgeuse already so many times, and after dealing with the annoyance of him and the rest of the witch cult, Subaru was more than willing to cut him down without giving him any chance to come back. As thanks to already understanding very well Betelgeuse's ability after the couple of times of fighting him, Subaru was able to find out about the fingers and how he's able to continuously come back, as after giving this knowledge to Julia, Subaru would be able to defeat Betelgeuse with low difficulty without him truly coming back. Finally allowing for these events to come to an end, as now with these events taken care of, this is where we can now move forward. As not only was Emilia saved from, dying like she did in multiple different timelines, but also Rem would be still alive with her name and memory still intact. Because you see, in this timeline, Rem and Crush would actually never encounter Greed and Gluttony due to defeating the White Whale sooner. As this would actually be coming to a surprise to the Archbishop, since later on we would find out about the fact that they orchestrated the attack, so finding out that the White Whale was taken down, and even more surprising was the fact that they were able to defeat it so quickly, resulting in their connection growing stronger and also causing the two of them to know each other better. As after these days of Subaru just enjoying himself and nothing big going on, this is where finally something would then happen, as Subaru along with Emilia would then be tasked to go to the sanctuary by Roswell, with Subaru going there just to simply support Emilia, as most of the events that would play out during this time would remain similar to the main timeline, with upon entering the sanctuary, Emilia getting stuck in there due to her being a half-breed, and also finding out about, Roswell and the rest of the villagers being there, and basically about the entire crisis that was going on in the sanctuary. As all of this would continue to play out exactly as it does in the main timeline, all the way until it was finally time for Emilia to then enter inside the tomb, fall into unconsciousness, with Subaru then following along with her. As upon entering Echidna's tomb, this is where Subaru would then be face to face with Echidna. Now the interaction between these two would play out differently, but would have the same outcome. As you see, during this time, as Subaru would be there just talking with her and just like having a simple conversation with Echidna, he would be able to catch her hidden intentions. As even though on the outside she tries to play it off and act oblivious to everything, Subaru can tell exactly what she truly was after, since he did read up on all the witches when he was staying in Roswell's. So this would cause Subaru to immediately be very, on the fence with her basically, as even though he was being polite and respectful, he did knew better than to trust anything she would say. As after the first conversation between them would then pass, this is where Subaru would then return back to the tomb, as he would be of course caught off guard with everything, but still nonetheless he would begin to move. As now knowing that Emilia was stuck, Subaru would then try his best to help her get out of it, while also at the same time he'll be trying to help out the villagers and Roswell and basically everyone that was there, as he'll be returning all the villagers to the mansion. And one interesting thing to note here is the fact that Subaru doesn't have that encounter with Elsa or the mob beast, considering the fact that Melly was still in prison and also Elsa was dead. He literally killed her in one blow. So due to that, that meant that Subaru wouldn't have too much problems in this arc that he would in the main timeline. But if there was some problems that would occur though, it was the fact that throughout this time as Subaru will be bringing in the villagers and everything, and we'd be trying to find out ways to help out Emilia and help her overcome the witch's trials, Subaru would still nonetheless end up dying 2 times during this point. And this would be due to encountering his biggest threat yet, this being the Great Rabbit. Now his first encounter with it would be quite surprising, as he would encounter it after going back to the mansion, as when he's there he would be overwhelmed by just the amount of them that were there. Now at first he would think that they were harmless, as he would try to pet one, but that's when it would go wrong, as even though he had reverse curse energy, and even though he would try using, some curse techniques like the Inumaki sign to blow them up and everything, due to just the sheer amount of them that was around, and due to him not having like infinite recyclable curse energy like Gojo, this would cause him to then unfortunately fall to them. So yeah, that would be one. And for the second one, Subaru would once again try doing the same thing, but this time he was much more prepared, as he would try to take on the Great Rabbit on his own terms, but unfortunately he would then soon realize that no matter how much he tried, his strength is just simply not enough at this point. And it was sad considering the fact that Subaru really did try his best on this one, as when he tried to do it the first time, and even though he was getting eaten up and everything, he did try to tell everyone to run away and to escape, which of course didn't work. And on the second attempt, even though he tried to take it on his own terms, he did have enough time to actually return back to the mansion and order everyone to run away. As during that time he tried to save Beatrice, but unfortunately he would fail considering the fact that she seemed to have a strange devotion to the library, as apparently she was waiting for her day, and if he wasn't going to arrive, then she wasn't really looking forward to living anymore. And this would cause Subaru to really be upset, as after both times he would be extremely distressed, enough to the point where once again he would encounter Echidna. Now during this point, this is where Echidna wouldn't try making that offer for Subaru, as basically she tries to go ahead and help him beat the Great Rabbit and tries to help him save the people, but in exchange for all that he was going to have to do a contract with her. Now Subaru, after hearing this, he would actually debate on it, considering the fact that it did sound like a good deal. He gets to save the people, he gets to stop the Great Rabbit, and all that, all for a simple contract. But fortunately though, before Subaru gets a chance to make his decision though, Echidna does allow him to speak to the other witches, just like he does in the main timeline, as after discussing with all of them and after finally finding out exactly what he needs to do, this is where Subaru would then decline her offer, and he would return back to the real world. But that's where things wouldn't take another sad turn, as when Subaru ends up returning, similar to the main timelines, the teller will be going after him, and this ends up resulting in Subaru having to do another reset. Now after failing already 3 times by this point, as Subaru had been completely caught off guard, didn't have enough strength, and just simply did not know that he was what he was dealing with, as he now knows exactly why he has returned by death, this will cause Subaru to then finally go into action as he decides to fully make up a plan. As right before he would end up leaving the tomb, this is where Subaru would then actually put on the ring that was on his necklace, bringing out Rika once again. As when Rika appears, she would immediately begin checking up on Subaru, asking him if he was okay and everything, and basically just being all affectionate and everything. To which Subaru would of course reciprocate it, but this is when he would then grow serious, as this is when he would then ask Rika if she wants to make a new contract. With Rika stopping for a moment as she would stare down Subaru, as then a ginormous amount of pressure would then begin to fill in the area. But yet Subaru was unconcerned about it, as in the very next moment, this is when Rika would then scream yes, as she was extremely affectionate about it and basically was open to the idea of making a new contract. As sooner or later, after we do a brief time skip, this is where we would then see Subaru leaving the tomb, as by this point now, Subaru has died 3 times, and this meant that the witch's scent on him was extremely large, enough to make Garfield grow extremely suspicious and wanting to fight Subaru. But yet, even with Garfield being suspicious and even with him being extremely powerful, that didn't mean that nothing compared to Subaru at the moment. As after a certain contract was made between him and Rika, Subaru had reached a whole new level of strength. As when him and Garfield fought, unfortunately for Garfield, he would then be defeated by Subaru with relative ease, as there wasn't really much of a challenge considering the fact that Subaru just simply had to tell him to sleep. As afterwards, this is when Subaru would then approach Emilia, as Emilia was still quite shaken up about her trial, but this is when Subaru would then help her out. As even though he doesn't do the same thing like, kissing her like he does in the main timeline, Subaru is able to help her out by basically bringing up everything that she worked hard for, and basically reminding her about where she came from the very beginning to where she is now, with all these people supporting her. Now this will cause Emilia to overcome the trials, as after doing so, this will cause her to finally be free, as now that she was, the 2 of them along with the rest of the group would then work together to defeat the Great Rabbit, with Subaru being the one to lure it to him, but before he does that, he does end up going back to Beatrice. With the events that happened there playing out similar to the main timeline, as by the end of it, Beatrice does end up finally exiting out of that contract that she had, and does finally end up accompanying Subaru. As this does end up leading to Beatrice no longer being isolated, but also causing Subaru to gain a significantly powerful ally, which would actually end up resulting in their battle against the Great Rabbit, as with the help of Beatrice as well as Emilia, this is where Subaru would then be allowed to then land the final blow. As thanks to a new contract that was formed between him and Rika, this would cause Rika to finally be able to awaken her true power. Because the thing is, the Rika that Subaru has been fighting with and everything, since he had entered into this world, was basically a nerf version. It was not the same version that he had back in the original world where he was Yuta. But now, thanks to his contract and everything, this one was way stronger compared to the one in his old world. And I'm talking about the one in the Jujutsu Kaisen Zero movie, the one that was able to defeat Geto. Yeah, this one that Subaru has in this timeline will be way stronger than that one. As thanks to using his maximum output attack, Subaru will be able to defeat the entirety of the White Rabbits by completely just blowing them up entirely, releasing a power that he's never had before, but one that he was openly willing to accept. As right after finally defeating the Great Rabbit, and finally putting the crisis to an end, this is where we can now do a time skip. As now flashing forward to after the events that transpire, we will now see Subaru and the rest of the Emilia camp, with this time it being official since back then it was more in the process of being built up. But now, since they actually now have a solid unit, and since Roswell was not planning everything like he was in the main timeline, since by this point Subaru was able to basically break all expectations for Roswell, so that meant that he was on her side. That also meant that the Emilia camp was now officially set up. as they had Garfeld, they had Frederica, they had Roswell on their side, as now finally things were looking up. And to make things even better is that by this point now that Subaru had accomplished so many tasks, he would officially then be instated as Emilia's knight. As he's already shown himself to be fully capable of fighting, he's already shown himself to be capable of great leadership in this situation, since this was the moment that Subaru really was beginning to develop. And most importantly of all, this would cause Subaru to then come to realize that by this point now, that this was the strength that he was going to need to survive in this world. As Subaru, after being faced with these many trials and these many events, this would cause Subaru to realize that he needs to be as strong as possible if he wants to at least be able to maintain this. And he needs to grow even stronger than that if he wants to make sure that him and his friends can live a better life. So with that being said, for the next following years that go by, we're now going to see Subaru as he would continue facing off many difficult events throughout his life. He'll be facing off against a variety of threats, ones that he have never encountered before, but ones he'll be able to overcome eventually, as we will see Subaru continue working hard in order to protect the friends that he has made and to help them all have better lives. As this would eventually end up leading to the very end of the story, as we now turn to the final scene of it. As now turning to the final moments of the story, we will now see the Emilia camp as it will be thriving by this point. As thanks to Subaru's hard work and thanks to the entirety of the Emilia camp working together, by this point now in the story it has been officially established and Emilia has changed the way a lot of people look at her, as she was already next in line to become, the ruler of the entirety of the kingdom of Lagunica. Now this would actually be a very surprising turn of events considering the fact that she was legitimately the one that was most hated and was the one that was least likely to win. But yet here she was, literally about to be crowned. And the one behind it and the main purpose behind all of it will be her knight, this being Subaru Natsuki, as by this point now Subaru had made himself quite a notable figure in the world of ReZero, since thanks to all his contributions and thanks to him defeating the witch cultists, as each one of them would try getting in his way, but he would take them all on, and thanks to him actually helping the entirety of the kingdom of Lagunica, this would cause him to be favorable in the eyes of many people, that if none of the candidates actually existed and the dragon wasn't around, Subaru would be the person that they would actually vote to be the leader of Lagunica. But since they have their own trials and since they have their own ways of doing things, and more precisely since the dragon emblem focused on only the 5 candidates, that meant that Subaru didn't have a choice when it comes to being the ruler of Lagunica. But that didn't change the fact that he was a main key into how it was right now, and that he was an important figure for what was about to happen. As the final moments for this would be Emilia being crowned queen, all while right beside her would be Subaru, as he'll be there smiling as the rest of the Emilia camp would be there cheering her on, all while many other of the royal candidates would be there actually showing the respect to her considering the fact that she actually made a lot of accomplishments thanks to Subaru's help. As this will be the final moment for this what if, as this will be the end to what if Subaru was Yuta's reincarnation. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this what if. I really hope you guys do enjoy. This what if was honestly very fun to make. Sorry it took so long to make it actually, as the main reason why I was so behind for making this what if was because of the fact that I honestly just didn't have the script for it. And then finally after making the script, I didn't realize just how uncaught up to ReZero I am. Like I kid you not, even till now, but at this point I'm not fully caught up to ReZero. I've only just recently began watching the entirety of the second season, as I had to mostly go off videos and stuff like that. But don't worry, I'm gonna get right back into watching and everything because I'm really excited for that. But that didn't stop the fact that I was having a lot of fun making this what if. It was interesting to actually write out Subaru's character on this one, considering the fact that, him being combined with the Jujutsu Sorcerer would be quite insane, considering the fact of just how crazy the world of ReZero is, especially with all the negative energy around. But yeah, besides that, y'all, it's great to make a video for y'all. I'm gonna be trying to make more videos since I'm now in summer, but do note that if I do not make them as fast as I usually do, it's because of the fact that I'm either having a writer's stump, or it's because of the fact that I'm just usually busy. Since, now that I'm getting older and everything, I'm getting caught up with a lot more busier stuff, like preparing for college and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, your boy is most definitely in the midst of doing a lot of things. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to stop grinding on this channel, as I already got more video ideas coming up, and I can't wait to share them with y'all. But yeah, it's your host HD Samurai here, and he's signing off. Peace and have a lovely day.
Colors, this is the color, this is the color, this is the color.